So our today's topic is types of immunity on the basis of mechanism of this development of this immunity, right? So we can develop immunity in our body in two ways. One is known as active immunity, another is known as passive immunity. So on the basis of mechanism, how the immunity develops in body, we divide immunity into two types, active immunity and passive immunity. So what is active immunity? This is the immunity which is immunity developed due to activity of the cells of our own immune system, our own immune system. So when our immune system reacts to a pathogen or a disease and develops immunity, that type of immunity is known as active immunity. Suppose a pathogen enters naturally into our body. Our immune system recognizes the pathogen. It forms defensive cells, antibodies against the pathogen. And the pathogen gets killed and we become immune to that pathogen, right? So this type of immunity is known as active immunity. So the immunity which is developed by our own immune system, the immunity which is developed by the activity of our own immune system, that immunity is known as active immunity. Then there is another method of immunity that is known as passive immunity. In passive immunity, our own immune system is not working, against the pathogen or disease. For example, okay, I will cite the example later on. So passive immunity, the immune system of a person is not working against the pathogen or disease. Then how he gets immunity? Then the person receives. Then this person receives ready-made antibodies from an external source, or from another person, right? So that immunity, which is developed in the body by receiving antibodies from some other person, where our own immune system is not working, that immunity is known as passive, right? So we have to classify immunity into two types, active immunity and passive immunity. So active immunity is that immunity which is developed by the activity of our own immune system. Passive immunity is the immunity which is developed by receiving antibodies from some external source when our own immune system is not working. For example, you are nowadays seeing that those persons who are infected with COVID-19 and are not developing antibodies against the virus, then they are given antibodies from those persons who have got cured from the COVID-19 infection and are now having antibodies in their blood. Nowadays, you might be seeing advertisements on Facebook, on TV, that a person in dash dash hospital requires plasma. So who will give the plasma? A person who was suffering from COVID-19 and has now recovered. So those recovered persons, they have antibodies in their blood plasma. So they can donate those antibodies to those patients who are not having the ability to produce the antibodies against COVID-19 by their own immune system, right? So some persons who are this time suffering from COVID-19 infection, they are not able to develop themselves antibodies against the COVID-19, right? Against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? So how they can be treated? We can obtain antibodies from those patients who have now recovered. those persons who have recovered from the infection, they have antibodies in their blood. We can obtain antibodies from their blood, and we can give these antibodies to those persons who are not able to form them by their own immune system and are suffering from COVID-19 infection. So this type of immunity, which will be developed in those patients, this will be known as passive immunity. This will be known as passive immunity. Active immunity is that immunity which is developed by the activity of our own immune system. So if a person has contacted this COVID-19 infection, he was now suffering for some time. During this time, his immune system got activated. His immune system produced antibodies, and by the help of those antibodies, he got cured, right? So he got cured because of the activity of his own immune system. So he has developed active immunity. He has developed active immunity. Now there is person B who is also suffering from COVID-19 infection, but he is not able to generate antibodies against the virus himself, right? So he is getting day by day ill. Then doctors give him antibodies which they have obtained from a person who has recovered from this COVID-19 infection. Now, these antibodies are put into his body. These antibodies, they work against the COVID-19 infection, they work against the virus, and the person gets cured and he develops immunity. So this immunity is known as passive immunity, right? So immunity which is developed by our own immune system, that is active immunity. Immunity which is developed in the body by reception of antibodies from some external source, that is known as passive immunity. Now this active immunity, it is further of two types. Now active immunity is further of two types, and passive immunity is also further of two types. Active immunity is now of two types. Naturally acquired active immunity, and artificially acquired active immunity. Similarly, passive immunity, it is again of two types. Naturally acquired passive immunity and artificially acquired passive immunity. So active immunity is of two types. Naturally acquired active immunity, artificially acquired active immunity. Passive immunity is of two types. Naturally acquired passive immunity, artificially acquired passive immunity. So what is naturally acquired active immunity? So this naturally acquired active immunity is the immunity which develops in the body of a person on natural contact to a pathogen. So it is developed by body on natural contact with the pathogen. So here there is natural contact with the pathogen. What do you understand by natural contact with the pathogen? You are going to school. On the way, you are exposed to dust and dirt. Along with that dust and dirt, some pathogens enter into your body unknowingly. Your body detects those pathogens and forms antibodies and defensive cells against those pathogens, so that to kill those pathogens and develop immunity against them. And you never fell ill, and you become immune to those bacteria which were present in that area. So that immunity, which is developed against this natural contact with the pathogen. This is known as naturally acquired active immunity. So you are not aware about the entry of pathogen. You are doing your routine work. In this routine work, you are exposed to different types of pathogens. So some of the pathogens enter into your body unknowingly. Your immune system detects them and forms antibodies and defensive cells against them. So that pathogen gets killed and you develop immunity against that pathogen, right? So this type of immunity, it is known as naturally acquired active immunity because the pathogen naturally entered into our body along with inhaled air, along with inhaled this food, ingested food, along with this ingested water, right? So you are in your natural environment. And in that natural environment, you naturally get exposed to different types of pathogens, which enter into your body through food, through water, through air, right? Through cuts and wounds. So this immunity, which is developed against those pathogens, this is known as naturally acquired active immunity, right? Then we have got artificially acquired active immunity. In this, we deliberately, in this, we deliberately, we deliberately introduce pathogen into our body, into our body, so that our immune system recognizes the pathogen and forms antibodies and defensive cells against it, so that we develop immunity. So this method of immunity is known as vaccination. It is also known as vaccination, or we call it as immunization. So this method of immunity development, it is known as vaccination or immunization. So what we do in this process of vaccination or immunization, we deliberately inoculate some pathogens into our body. Those pathogens, they are introduced into the body in different forms. For example, a pathogen may be attenuated pathogen. Attenuated pathogen means live but weakened pathogen. The pathogen is still alive, but we have made it very weak by some treatments, and we introduce it into our body deliberately, so that our immune system recognizes the pathogen and forms antibodies and defensive cells against it, right? Or the pathogen may be introduced into the body in killed form. Killed form. The pathogen is killed and then introduced into our body, so that the antigens which are present on the cell surface of this killed pathogen, they are recognized by our immune system, and immune system forms defensive cells and antibodies against it, so that we develop immunity, right? Or sometimes toxoids of the pathogen, toxoid of pathogen, that is introduced into body. So what is toxoid? Toxoid means a toxin whose toxicity has been neutralized, but it still retains the antigenic property. Toxoid is a toxin whose toxicity has been neutralized, but it still retains antigenic property, right? So in this way, a pathogen is deliberately inoculated into body, either in attenuated form or in killed form or in toxoid form, right? The toxin or pathogen is neutralized and then it is introduced into body. So this deliberate inoculation of attenuated pathogen, killed form or toxoid form into our body to stimulate our immune system for forming antibodies and defensive cells against the pathogen. This is known as immunization or vaccination. And this type of immunity is known as artificially acquired active immunity. You might have heard or you might have experienced that in schools, some doctors use it to visit. They use it to immunize or vaccinate the children whenever there was any danger of outbreak of any epidemic, right? So in old days, cholera spread in the form of an epidemic, right? There were some other epidemics. So in those times, doctors used it, healthcare workers, they used it to visit the schools and they used it to vaccinate or immunize the children. So what was done in this process of vaccination or immunization? So pathogen in attenuated form, live but weakened form, or pathogen in killed form, or the toxoid of the pathogen was deliberately inoculated into the body. It was deliberately injected into the body so that when the pathogen was detected by our immune system got stimulated and it started forming antibodies and defensive cells against that pathogen, which was deliberately introduced into our body, right? So this awakens our immune system. This awakened our immune system. So it got ready. So when the pathogen comes in, the active form, the immune system is already ready. Then immune system immediately tackles the pathogen and prevents it from causing the disease, right? So in this way, we become ready to fight the disease. So this power of our body to be ready to fight the disease, it is known as the immunity. And this immunity is developed by artificial method because we are artificially introducing the pathogen into our body. So we call it as artificially acquired active immunity. How does it differ from the naturally acquired active immunity? In naturally acquired active immunity, there is natural contact. Pathogen unknowingly enters into our body through food, through water, through inhaled air, through cuts or injuries, right? We are not aware about that. Our immune system detects that pathogen and forms antibodies and defensive cells against that, and we become immune. But in this artificially acquired active immunity, we deliberately insert pathogen, introduce pathogen into our body, right? So that our immune system recognizes the pathogen, forms antibodies and defensive cells against it, so that it becomes ready to tackle the actual pathogen, which may enter into our body later on. So this type of immunity is known as artificially acquired active immunity, and we call it vaccination or immunization, right? So these were the two types of active immunity. Now we are going to discuss about passive immunity. So as I told you, passive immunity is the immunity which is not developed by the activity of our own immune system. Because of certain reasons, our own immune system is not able to fight against the disease. So we have to get the immunity from some external source. So when we receive immune system cells, when we receive immunity from an external source, we call it as passive immunity, right? Now this passive immunity is of two types: naturally acquired passive immunity and artificially acquired passive immunity. What is naturally acquired passive immunity? It involves the natural transfer of immunity providing substances. It involves the natural transfer of immunity providing substances from mother to fetus. It involves natural transfer of antibodies from mother to fetus. How? For example, through placenta. For example, through placenta during embryonic development. During embryonic development. You know, immunoglobulin G. There is a class of antibodies known as immunoglobulin G. It is transferred from mother to fetus through placenta. is transferred from blood of mother. From blood of mother, it is transferred through placenta into fetus. So it gives this antibody gives immunity to fetus, right? Similarly, during breastfeeding, during breastfeeding, mother transfers mother transfers immunoglobulin A into fetus through colostrum to our milk. So when the mother is breastfeeding his child, during this process of breastfeeding, immunoglobulin A is transferred from mother's body to fetal body through this colostrum, right? So these two antibodies, immunoglobulin G and immunoglobulin A, they are transferred from mother to fetus naturally. Mother cannot stop it or mother cannot enhance it. Mother is transferring them naturally to our fetus through placenta and through milk. So this type of immunity which develops in the fetus because of these two types of antibodies, immunoglobulin G and immunoglobulin A. This type of immunity is known as naturally acquired passive immunity. So in naturally acquired passive immunity, there is natural transfer of antibodies from mother to fetus through placenta and through colostrum, right? So this fetus gets immunity naturally from her mother. That is why we call it as naturally acquired passive immunity. Then there is another method of immunity development that is known as artificially acquired passive immunity. There is another method of immunity development that is known as artificially acquired passive immunity. In this artificially acquired passive immunity, there is it involves it involves transfer of ready-made antibodies, ready-made antibodies from an immune donor to an immunocompromised recipient. So in this artificially acquired passive immunity, ready-made antibodies, they are transferred from the body of an immune donor to an immunocompromised recipient. As I was just telling you, we are this time suffering from the COVID-19 infection. There are some persons whose immune system can overcome this virus. When their immune system overcomes the virus, they get cured, and then their immune system produces antibodies against the virus, right? So they have ready-made antibodies in their blood circulation. Now we can use their ready-made antibodies for treating those persons whose immune system has got immunocompromised, whose immune system is not able to fight against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? We have got two persons, person A and person B. Both of them got infected. Both of them were positive. This was also positive, this is also positive. We have got two persons, person A and person B. Both of them are positive for COVID-19 infection, right? But this person A, he gets cured. He gets cured. And when he gets cured, he develops antibodies. He naturally develops antibodies against this SARS-CoV-2 virus. There are two persons. I will write it above. There are two persons who are positive for the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Ajna infection. This is person A. This is person B. Both of them have tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 virus. SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? Or we say they are COVID-19 positive, right? They are admitted to the hospital. Person A recovers. Person A recovers. And he develops antibodies. He develops antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, right? But person B is not recovering. Is not recovering. He is getting serious day by day, right? Why he is getting serious day by day? Because his immune system is not fighting against the virus. He got recovered because his immune system fought against the virus. And his immune system produced antibodies against the virus. And he got cured. But this person B, he is also positive. But his immune system is not in a state to fight against the virus. So he is getting, his condition is worsening day by day. So how we can treat this person? So we can extract antibodies from the blood of person A, and we may give these antibodies to person B, right? When he will receive ready-made antibodies against the SARS-CoV virus from this recovered patient, these antibodies, they will kill the virus, and he too may get cured. You got it? There are two persons who are suffering from the infection. One recovers from the infection. Why he recovers from the infection? His immune system fought against the virus, and his immune system developed antibodies against the virus, which killed the virus. Now he is okay, he has recovered fully, and he has antibodies in his blood plasma. Person B is not recovering because his immune system is not in a condition to fight against the virus. So his condition is getting worse day by day. Now doctors, they take antibodies from this recovered person's blood. In his blood, there are ready-made antibodies, which his immune system has produced. Now doctors, they take his antibodies and they inoculate them into person B's blood. So these antibodies, they fight against the SARS-CoV-2. They fight against the virus. And this person B may also get cured. So how this person B got immunity? He got immunity from external source. And how this immunity was developed in his body? So we extracted antibodies from this person and injected them into this person. So this method of developing immunity, this is known as artificially acquired passive. This is known as artificially acquired passive immunity. So we may cure this person by transfer of ready-made antibodies into his body by artificial means, right? By injection. So he will develop immunity, and this type of immunity will be known as artificially acquired passive immunity. So this person will get cured by this artificially acquired passive immunity. Are you getting me? We had two types of passive immunities. One was naturally acquired passive immunity, in which mother naturally transferred antibodies into her fetus through placenta and through colostrum, right? In artificially acquired passive immunity, in artificially acquired passive immunity, antibodies, they are taken from an immune donor. Who is your immune donor? The person A who has recovered from the COVID-19 infection. Now, in his blood, there are ready-made antibodies. We extract these ready-made antibodies and we give them to a person who is not able to fight against the COVID-19 infection. We introduce these ready-made antibodies into his blood, and because of these antibodies, he is able to fight against this SARS-CoV-2, and he gets cured. So he develops immunity, and this type of immunity is known as artificially acquired passive immunity, right? So these were the different types of immunity which will develop on the basis of different mechanisms of immune and this immunity development, right? So these were the types of immunity on the basis of mechanism of development of the immunity, right? So first we discuss that immunity is two types: active immunity, passive immunity. What is the difference? Active immunity is developed by the activity of our own immune system. Passive immunity is developed when we make transfer of ready-made antibodies into the body of another person. Then we discuss it as active, naturally acquired active immunity, artificially acquired active immunity. Then we discuss this as naturally acquired passive immunity and artificially acquired passive immunity. I hope you have understood all this. So we are running out of time. Thank you for being with me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.